An freelance research overview has told how badger culling can include a humble impact in reduction bovine TB. But it adds how the politics would conduct to more than rather than 40,000 badgers creature culled a year. The paper says how such a top levels of culling may not be openly reasonable. The authors encourage by the government to speed the growth of non-lethal controls, such as vaccine. The received information were published in an overview led by Professor Sir Charles Godfrey of Oxford College. But one specialist told the paper had slight to say on the efficiency of the present badger culls. The paper was authorized by Michael Gove, Secretariat of Country for Environmental, Meal and Village Sphere, in February. He requested an freelance team of scientists to overview DFRA's policy for control the distribution of phthisis, terabyte, in bovine. On to Professor Godfrey, he was clearly requested not to see at the efficiency of the present culls. Instead of Professor Godfrey and his crew drew on the results of the randomized badger monitoring testing transferred out among 1998 and 2007. These showed how culling tended to growth TB in badgers since of enlarged motion. It did, yet, discover how a reducing of among 12% and 16% in the bet of new cases of bovine TB was in theory probable, but in considerable caveats, the culling had to be transferred out above a big region in nature boundaries for among 8 to 12 days every year for 4 persons year, and how more than rather than 70% of badgers had to be annihilated. With culling began in 2013, scientists and campaigners include pronounced concerns how the culls how include been rolling out by DFRA include not been in compliance in the stringent criteria set out by the specialist team, since they include proven too costly or too hard. They say how incorrectly carried out testing could in fact growth bovine TB rates. But Professor Godfrey notes how, in concept, culling is one of the toolkit ministers include at their removal, and it should be up to them if its limit gain was worth. We sign how culling does include an impact on the illness. The sentence we use is a actual but humble impact, he told. If anything else is implicated later one would apparently take away, since if one does not take away one is throw off one of the toolkit. But of year down there are some factors implicated. Else reason Professor Godfrey puts striker in favor of culling is how it makes struck farmers more than verifiable to conduct out unloved and expensive illness monitoring measures on their agriculture and in conveying their bovine. It is potential how the agriculture production would be more than readily to take some interventions how could adversely influence milk and bovine efficiency if they believed how the risk of transfer of badgers was creature sturdily aimed, he told. The paper warns yet how extended culling would not be reasonable to several, perhaps big, sections of the social, and the expenses of police could be significant, and says how a change off of culling is very desired. Particularly, it emphasizes the requirement for an appropriate assessment of badger vaccine. Professor Godfrey's paper as well state how infections of bovine to bovine is high rather than had been mined, perhaps since the present so-named leather testing utilized to testing for the illness is less than safe rather than expert one day believed. It thus urges how DFRA adopts more than susceptible tests. The Agriculture Secretary welcomed the paper and told how DFRA would offer its answer by following summer. We greet the overview of by the government's 25-year bullish TB policy, and I expand my thanks to Sir Charles Godfrey and his crew for their difficult job in making the paper. Monsieur Charles's paper is an essential deposit how will report following stairs in the policy to reach formally TB complementary statute for England by 2038. Professor Rosie Woodroffe of the Zoology Community of London, ZSL, told how the paper had lot nice ideas but told anything on the efficiency of the present badger culls. This paper contains slight crucial assessment of if the present farm-led culls are efficaciously reduction bovine terabyte, she told. It accountable results of the at first 2 year of tracking out of mention any of the caveats turned on by the unique authors. It makes no refer of more than latter information, that include offered percent might be declining in 2 areas but growing in a tertiary. Professor Lord John Krebs of Oxford College, who led the randomized badger monitoring testing, told how the paper specified how DIFRA and farmers' requirement to do more than if bovine TB is to be stamped of. Now, lot of the distribution of TB in bovine arises of a conjunction of depressingly low understanding of measures to hinder bovine upcoming in pin in badgers, trade of contaminated bovine, and the low susceptibility of the norm leather testing for TB, that tool how down there is potential to be a lie water reservoir of contagion in lot bovine herds in top hazard areas, he told. Except by the government and the agriculture production gear these problems currently, TB will not be eradicated or controllable.